Hello, I am Arabella Gibbins. I'm a voice teacher at LIPA, which is the Liverpool Institute for Performing Arts. I'm also a voice coach and I do one-to-one coaching, and I'm a singing teacher.
And I'm Nick Poll, and I had the fascinating experience of helping Bella briefly with some of her research on how to use clean language in voice teacher training. So Bella, what was it that got you interested in clean language in the first place?
Well, I had heard about clean language via your book, actually, Nick. And as a teacher in training, clean language really struck me as something that was incredibly important to know more about. And during my training as on the MFA, that's the Master of Fine Arts in Voice Studies at Central, in my first year, it was going around my head a lot. And in my second year, which was my research year, I decided to write my dissertation exploring clean language and how it could be implemented in my classroom.
And you were telling me that the use of metaphor in voice training can be kind of quite strict in some ways, and you were looking at how to open that out?
Yeah, exactly that. So because of the nature of voice work, we can't see our voices and we can't see what's going on inside our bodies. So imagery is really important and incredibly effective, often much more effective than asking someone to do something anatomically. Um, but I did notice that there are certain images that are used almost universally in voice work and rarely questioned as to what the relationship someone might have with one of those images. For example, we use the image of a trampoline for the diaphragm, which is great as long as you like trampolines. There's an image of the spine being like a tree or the body being like a tree, which again, mostly I think is very effective. But investigating and going a little bit deeper, you notice I've found that students have really different relationships with these images, and I wanted to find out what would happen if they generated their own.
Could you give us some examples of just how personal these metaphors can get?
Yeah, absolutely. So something that I ask my students to do pretty much every class we have is to get a sense of being grounded or feeling grounded. We start with the feet pretty much every time we start using our voices. And I was interested in people's relationships with this image of a tree, which is something that it's the classic image because it's got roots and the legs can be the trunks, etc. And I asked, instead of saying, imagine you're a tree, I asked the students to ask themselves, if I were as grounded as I could possibly be, what would that be like? And within moments, the different examples that people were offering up, yes, there was one boy who was like a tree, but instead of the roots going down, it was as if they were coming up into his body. There was one of the girls, it was as if she was on magnets and they were keeping her stuck to the ground. Another student was like a car with its brakes on. Someone else had a boat with an anchor that she had dropped off that she could pull up when she needed. The list goes on. And it was fascinating to me that it really didn't take very much prompting for these students to come up. I think it felt safe enough and held enough for students to feel like they could volunteer these images. And these were images that I continued to use with the individual students when I could remember for the rest of the term, which was incredible for me because I knew that that the images that they were working with are so personal and therefore hopefully more effective than me impressing my idea of what grounded should be onto them.
Can I finish just by asking you the two classic closing questions that we use in clean language? The first one is, and what do you know now about all of that?
I know so much more about the role that imagery and metaphor plays in our daily lives. And it's really shone a spotlight, particularly on the language that I use when I'm teaching. And actually outside of the classroom too, the language that I use in life.
Thanks. And the second question is, what difference does knowing that make?
I think having a more heightened awareness of the language that I'm using means that I am more conscious of any assumptions that I'm making or suggestions even that I'm making without realizing. I also notice often if I'm in workshops on the receiving end or in any kind of learning environment where I'm the student, I notice how the teacher or the workshop leader or facilitator will be, again, impressing his or her own experience, history, assumptions on me. So I'm getting a little bit better at noticing that and brushing that off and coming back to my experience.
Just to finish, Bella, if you could give us an example of just how embodied voice training is and how this warm-up work is so important before you open your mouth or make a sound, how important it is to bring your attention to the body. How do you do that when you're working with students?
I can show you a very basic structure of how I would run a warm-up, and that would always start with the mind. And for me, that's a moment to bring the mind into the room, just to check that the mind's not still doing the shopping list while we're doing the warm-up. Setting an intention is a really lovely way of, I think, aligning the body and the mind quite quickly. You could even do the clean setup, which is Caitlin Walker's, and I thoroughly recommend looking into that. I find it really effective, particularly with groups of people. And then once the mind is ready to work, then we start to open the body. And by that, we are really opening the body to prepare for the breath. So that would always be something like stretching up, opening the upper chest, breathing, always breathing during this, breathing into the back, in between the shoulder blades. Probably some shoulder rolls, because we all spend most of us spend time these days driving or at computers. So finding some openness here, releasing the belly so that the diaphragm can move down on the in-breath, feeling your bum on the seat if you're sat down and or your feet on the floor. Particularly if we're standing, there's going to be a little bit more movement, but you can still do this sat down. And then once we've prepared the body for the breath, we can take a deep breath in, so releasing the belly, which means that there might be some movement as the belly probably moves out, diaphragm moving down. And you can let that breath go. And then we transform the breath into voice. And a really simple way of doing this is by humming. So we're just bringing some vibration into the body. So you can do this as I'm talking. So you can take a low breath into the body and just let out a really easy long hum, as if you're about to say ma. So there is space in the mouth and you'll feel vibration in the lips. And in fact, let's do it all together. Let's have one more where we're going to open up to a ma, and this will finish us off. So taking a low breath into the body, through the mouth or the nose. A long humming, so feeling the lips vibrating, beautiful. And then at the end, let's open out to a ma and share that sound.
Ma, thank you very much. That was wonderful. Really lovely to hear how clean language can help in something like voice work, which maybe some people wouldn't think so obvious, but it all comes back to the body, to this embodied sense of yourself, and the voice is just another expression of that. So Bella, I can't thank you enough for taking your time. I know you're a very busy person, to give us a bit of an example of that. And good luck with your work. Thanks a lot.
Such a pleasure. Thanks, Nick. See you soon.